I will move on to a next very interesting contextual situation. Let's move on to the area of tourism. So I'm very much, I have a warm welcome to Petra Stolba. So thank you for being with us. We had quite a bit of discussions over the last weeks about things. Tourism is very often a well discussed area nowadays in this crisis, which has quite a bit of influence on the economic terms, but also quite of influence for people wellness, people behavior, people freedom, and how people will talk about this crisis very often in terms of we cannot do the same way of tourism as we can it before. So Petra Stolba is Managing Director of the Austrian National Tourist Office. She has been in the area for quite a while and quite a lot of experiences. And thank you for being with us and sharing with us your perspective.
Yeah, hello, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. And I'm really happy to be part of that because it's a very exciting topic. Well, how can you begin a statement without referring to the coronavirus at present? It's actually impossible, especially when you come from the tourism industry, because coronavirus in particular has shown how elaborated Austrian tourism's service and supply chains really are. Many sectors, workplaces, and destinies rely on people traveling in search of precious and enriching moments. And up until now, the tourism and leisure industry has contributed around 16% to Austria's GDP after all. And in 2019 last year, we recorded 153 million overnight stays, which made us actually, as always, one of the world's top 15 holiday countries. And that's in absolute numbers. Irrespective of the extremely difficult economic situation caused by coronavirus, I would like to use the next minute to talk about the future of tourism. Interestingly, there are actually two versions of what might follow the crisis, and probably this is not only in tourism the case. On the one hand, there are those who hope that we will soon return to the old normal, who protest against excessive measures and demand steps from those in charge to restore former order, who look forward to the reincarnation of the old normal. And on the other hand, there are those who believe that coronavirus is simply just accelerating a change that was waiting to happen. A fundamental shift across actually all areas of life, the everyday culture, values, politics, environment, and, of course, economy. And a change that was making its way through parts of society even before coronavirus. May I remind you, Fridays for Future, Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter. But it's not just socio-political shifts that are becoming even more apparent. Economically, the idea that each generation will be better off than the one that preceded it has also proven to be an illusion. So the present was already filled with radical uncertainty before coronavirus and faced the challenge of writing a new future. And tourism industry faced major pre-coronavirus challenges too. The travel industry was suffering from a loss of trust and image due to liquidation, Thomas Cook, and geopolitical uncertainties. Climate and over-tourism debates led to a clear change in travel patterns already. For some time, the industry has been fluctuating between seemingly unstoppable growth and an increasing load of challenges that calls for a shift in thought and direction. And this new incarnation of tourism is now being accelerated. In Austria, we're starting to talk about which form of tourism we would like to come out of the crisis with, and what resilient tourism could look like. And with resilient, we do not mean technical changes to be just more efficient, but far more the aim of the transformation itself. So we are looking for a new tourism model actually that incorporates the ecological, economical and sociocultural dimensions in the best possible way. And I do not want to delve much further into what this form of tourism could look like at this stage, as that is actually not our subject of today. But I would like to give you a brief overview of my personal vision. Responsible tourism is all about making better places for people to live in and better places for people to visit, but in that order. So tourism is no longer viewed on a microeconomic level. It's not just about the individual businesses anymore. It is about understanding tourism as part of living space. Tourism lives with the region, not from it. And this change in the perception of and within tourism is also required to meet society's new demands for travel, where it has been about providing a bed, then a baggage, and then perfect holiday services throughout the last 70 years since mass tourism was introduced. Postmodern tourist is looking for individual experiences. And in English, the word experience covers actually two different phenomena that in other languages are referred to by two different words. In German, for example, has the word Erlebnis, which has connotations of amusement, escapism, and the like, and the word Erfahrung, which has connotations with learning. At the same time, the increasing digitalization is turning the passive consumption of experiences into active, dynamic, and participatory processes. Tourists are becoming key players and co-creating experiences with hosts, actually putting the guest at the center of the service for the very first time. Experiences are no longer one uniform template, but created offline and online with the guest along the so-called customer journey, facilitating interaction, exchange, and cooperation for an enhanced travel process and the valorization of experiences. So a huge first staging more engaging experiences needs to be taken, and that means to wisely leverage digital technology in order to better fuse the real with the virtual. We're not talking about banishing reality in doing so, as reality will always guarantee the most intense experiences. It's more about the possibilities that technology and data provide for guests to help shaping their experience, or to make it even possible for the very first time. Tourism was a forerunner in digitalization. Processes, structures, information, booking platforms, and services were optimized through technology early on. And now it's about changing the whole travel process radically. Sustainable tourism will require a digital transformation across the entire business model beyond business logic. And this is likely to draw on a wide range of social and mobile technologies, including internet, digital data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, IoT, augmented and virtual reality, and so on. as well as digital platforms or mobile payment solutions, voice and emotional controls, or even future interfaces such as mind control. So resilient tourism means enabling guests to create their own authentic, individual, and technologically supported holiday experiences. And the digitalization of analog service chains and making those thousands of service providers outside digitally available will be the homework of our industry, and that's quite plenty of work to be done. Thank you very much at that point.
Thank you very much. So let's see if there's some questions coming in at that case. There's one comment, one comment went in terms of the relation of tourism or the significance of tourism income for Austria to other areas. The question is a little bit different because I phrase it, I turn it a little bit around. So, if this comes true, what you've just mentioned in terms of the individual experiences, in terms of another form of tourism and maybe sustainable tourism, what other areas can learn from that if this is made to a reality quite soon?
Well, I think that it will not only happen in tourism. As we talked before about retail, definitely this would be an interesting discussion, how Spar tries to shape experiences when it comes to retail, for example. So I think it's a question of being and self-dependent individuum. You know, you need to be involved in what you do. It's not anymore passive consumption, and this will happen in all sectors of living. That's my personal point of view.
Are all these tourism areas, hotels, branches, service providers are ready yet for this change?
We're working on that. Well, that's what I tried to explain. From the microeconomic level, of course, each company has its own circumstances and environment, you know. But the point is digitalization. The big change. The big change is that you start to think from the points of the customers and not from the supply side. Yeah, so that's the big advantage.
So, Eric, Jan, do you want to say something about the retail aspect in comparison to tourism, because it was mentioned by Petra?
The question is absolutely right and valid. And also here, it's about first trying to understand the real needs of people. And it's not about the technology itself. I have always a huge amount of discussions here that people say, okay, look at this cool tool and look what it can do here. And I always say, yes, I know what you can do with the technology, but cui bono, right? Who benefits from it? And first you need to understand really this behavior, and to really understand you need to go out of the building. You need to go out and observe people. And then from this deep understanding, you can start doing interviews, etc., and all these kind of things. And then you start building prototypes that you can validate. And there are methods for this, of course. This whole design thinking area is about this, the discovery of needs, and trying to find out if you are asking the right questions. And that's the whole point. And from there, you can start building new things.
There's another question comes in terms of tourism. So, Petra, where do you see the limits of tourism? Keyword over tourism. It has to come, almost for sure. So, any reflection that at the moment we don't face over tourism, but we had it several months ago. Where you see the limits of tourism?
Interestingly enough, actually, first of all, from my point of view, it's not the term over tourism is misleading, because actually it's unbalanced tourism. We talk about visitor flow management, so this is also now the case, because when you think about our famous Christkindl markets, the Christmas markets, we now try to figure out how can we organize the right amount of people at a certain time at a certain place. So it's visitor flow management is also in times of Corona is essential. But this was not the question. It was just like as a remark. Definitely, it will shift. The tendency is, of course, shift from mass tourism to quality tourism, especially for us. We cannot support any mass tourism due to circumstances. So yes, there will, from my point of view, there will be a shift because people will change, and that's what we just discussed. You have to start the perspective from the demand side. You have to what people want, and obviously this behavior will change.
So thank you very much. I think that opens quite a lot of follow-up aspects, points, and follow-up discussions we anyway intend to do sometimes. I now move over to Katharina Rathheiser, and I will bring her in. So in relation to another dimension of resilience from a more scientific and psychological viewpoint. So Katharina Rathheiser is the grandchild of Viktor Frankl, and she is also deputy director of the Viktor Frankl Institute in Vienna. I hope everybody knows about Viktor Frankl, or probably Katharina can help me in bringing that in a bit, what he did. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. And he was the father of logotherapy as part of an existential and humanistic psychology. So that's for short, a very short introduction of Viktor Frankl. But I will welcome now Katharina, and thank you for being with us. And probably you can help me a little bit and help us a bit to understand the philosophy of Viktor Frankl a bit. So how do you feel talking about, in this discussion, talking about resilience, talking about things which probably open some thoughts from your side in terms of your experience and your family experience?
Well, first of all, yes, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I hope you hear me. I hear myself very loudly now. Yes, as you mentioned, in case you're not familiar with it, logotherapy, the Greek word will explain it. Logotherapy, or healing through meaning, is the psychological theory developed by my late grandfather, Viktor Frankl. He died when I was 27 years old, so I really was lucky to have met him and seen him and experienced him for a very long time, actually. He developed the idea that man's primary motivation is the search for meaning. And this he did before concentration camp. This is a common misunderstanding that during this ordeal he found out about this motivation, which is not true. He found it out beforehand, but it was tested. It was put to the test during concentration camp. Because he saw that those people who were meaning orientated, who had a meaning, those were the people most likely to survive in concentration camp. So the basis of his theory, and also his Menschenbild, the way he looks at humankind, at humans, the basis is that life has meaning under all circumstances, including the most undesirable circumstances. Referring to the first topic of today, the crisis, the pandemic, I guess he would say that life is always fragile. Our expectations are always fragile. And as we have seen just recently, that things can change in the blink of an eye. and throw us into a situation we did not expect. And most of the times this will happen on an individual level, because personal crisis is typically what a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, a neurologist is confronted with on a daily basis. And he was a medical doctor. What is new in 2020 is that we face a global crisis which affects all mankind in the same, more or less the same way, at the same time. But still, it's not entirely true. Mankind has been through crises before, like wars and prior. It's just that we individually don't remember them. And also referring to the crisis, Matthias Horks, I want to quote him, he said, "There will be a new normality when we start asking the right questions about the future." And I think that my grandfather would add to that, that we are the ones who are asked. Life always presents us with questions. So we are always, and we have always been called to ask ourselves, what is the most meaningful way to deal with the current situation? And this, of course, holds true both for the pandemic and digitalization. Because every situation is full of potential meaning. I'm taking you through the basics of logotherapy in a very fast way now. And a crisis does not take away meaning potential, it just changes them. I also find it interesting that Matthias Horks, he didn't quote that today, but there was that viral, in a positive way, viral newsletter at the beginning of the lockdown in Austria. I remember reading it on the underground, knowing that this would be my last ride on the underground for a very long time, where he introduced the concept of regnosis, the backward forecast, he called it. And in that newsletter, he wrote something like, if I remember that correctly, that imagine yourself after the lockdown, imagine yourself sitting in some street cafe in September of 2020, which now we know is very optimistic. And imagine yourself in the future looking back on today. And again, Viktor Frankl would add, looking back on today and on the decisions you made today. This change of attitude will make it easier for you to find the concrete meaning in today's questions. So what do you want to say in the future about how you coped? What is the meaning you can realize now, make real now, bring into reality? A pandemic has no meaning. We cannot find meaning in a pandemic, but we can find meaning during a pandemic.
Katharina, do you see as everything which you said and everything was in the approach from Viktor Frankl has some value for today? Do you see enough momentum, or do you see enough knowledge and application of this knowledge at nowadays, or in this crisis situation, or should there be more knowledge, or at least more transfer of knowledge, that people know how to deal with based on this series and based on these application areas?
Well, it's interesting that the interest in Viktor Frankl's theory has raised lately in the last 6 on a world level. We find that in the mails and the questions coming to the institute, and it's. Also, I always thought or think that he was visionary in seeing things that are in the far future and explaining them in simple words. We have to remember that he was talking about meaning 1890, almost 100 years ago. And now these are the buzzwords. I mean, they're everywhere. They're in marketing. There's a tsunami of meaning. Even drinks have to have a meaning. Work needs meaning. So, and also, of course, resilience. Now I'm coming back to resilience. Also mindfulness. Resilience, he never actually used the word. But still, he is called now a pioneer of resilience research. What he used was the defiant power of the soul. which is a slightly different thing. But what he found out is that meaning makes a person resilient. So this is the momentum we have today. People start finding out about this. And also that resilience in itself is less of a goal; it's more of a consequence and a byproduct of an openness to meaning. And whatever we call it, we don't have to quote Frankl. We don't have to call it meaning or resilience. I see more and more people, like in positive psychology, it's more or less the same thing, finding out about this. So there is kind of a universal truth that we cannot oversee, and so that was his vision. And now it comes to the test, and now we see that there is a lot of truth, universal truth about it, whatever we might call it.
Just a short question. So the Viktor Frankl Institute, so that everybody is aware of, has exactly that goal. What I got to transfer and to enrich the momentum of this approach and this visionary thinking. Let's say, call it that way. Am I right in that interpretation?
Yes, that's true. We are trying to spread the work and the theories on a scientific level, also to connect people internationally who are working in this field. The true story behind the institute, or the founding of the institute, is that my grandfather was a doctor at heart. He was listed in the official, his number was listed in the official phone book, and he answered all the letters he got from all over the world personally, and his family founded this entity in the late 1980s to protect him a little bit, to do the paperwork, to answer his mails, to publish an international journal of logotherapy, and so on. And we're still doing that. And you can still find lots of information on our website, viktorfrankl.org, in German and English. And also my brother recently founded the Viktor Frankl Institute of America, viktorfrankelamerica.com, where you can really find the things I just tried to explain in a nutshell, logotherapy and the ideas in a nutshell, whatever you might call them afterwards. That's one thing my grandfather always wanted. He wanted that his ideas help people, whatever you call them. It was not important to him. He published his first book without his name on it. It was not important to him to appear as a person. It was important to him to help people to be a doctor in the original sense of being a doctor. So you can find all those ideas in a very short version.
Very great. As I looked into the website of the Viktor Frankl Institute, I think there's quite a lot of information on it. Thank you for giving us this short viewpoint on a bit of an historical viewpoint, or even a very actual viewpoint. So we are moving more or less towards the end of this panel discussion. I want to return back to Matthias Horks, if he is still here. And he still hears me. Yes, he's here. Matthias, any further reflection from your side based on the things which you have heard over the last 1.5, a little bit more? And then I have a question from the audience for you.
Well, it's just a kind of resonance which goes. Basically, the reason for it is that Corona interrupted our routines, and now this ecosystem of this interrogation of humankind is going in every branch, in every organization, and either it's ignored or it's not. And it's in the basement of all the things is cultural complexity. So every culture has a kind of certain level of complexity, which comes to a ceiling when disruptions happen, and they are also rooted in the development of complexity. The internet, modern technology, creates an over-complexity of the world, which has its expression in the coronavirus. And this resonates to us back and asks us for solutions in an even higher complexity. Basically, the whole complexity theory is very useful to understand everything which was said, because everybody who talked about making more intelligent systems, more intelligent companies, more intelligent thoughts, more intelligent tourism, and in a way coping with the limits of linearity. So, by example, the example of tourism, I think, is very, very interesting here. If you just paint the curve of tourism further and further, more planes, more flying, more, then you will destroy the world. And this is not possible. So we have to find a recursion in these kind of systems. And because we can't sometimes find the recursions out of ourselves, crises help us, because they just tell us one story. It will not go on, or like it was seen on a big placard in a theater, big theater session in Zurich. It must not go on. That's basically what a crisis is. It must not go on. And I think the opportunity or the possibility we can give ourselves is that we start to communicate with this message. It must not go on means also there's something else possible.
I have to read it because I have it here. There's a follow-up question which from the audience, which maybe goes into that direction. So the question is, it's a short version of the question is, do you think we reached the top of digital development? Do we have enough digital development? Do we need more? I know the answer. I guess I know the answer, but anyway, I want to reflect. From your side.
Yeah, we reached the tipping point of the linearity. So I think the idea of more of quantum computers or artificial intelligence in a very stupid way, there we are on the peak. We are beyond the peak. We are on the tipping point of that idea. And now probably we have to find a new word, because digitalization always evokes. If you give this into the browser of Google and click on digitalization, you only see blue faces, which are making the illusion that humans can become computers, and that is, I think, a very wrong idea, which leads us into the wrong direction, and this leads us to dystopia. And now the second round comes. I think the recursion is the right idea. So digitality tries to ask itself about its human sense. And so it's not the end of it. It's a new beginning.
It's a new beginning, yeah. I think that anyway, it's a good word as a closing. It's the new beginning. So I think we had 2 hours of very interesting perspectives, discussions, way too less time to discuss every aspect here. I think 2 hours is, we rushed over a lot of different topics. So I very much thank you all for being part of this virtual exercise. I think I'm sure we have several possibilities to follow up on these discussions in all the directions and all the different perspectives. So I thank all the participants, the audience, you as a panelists, and again, very much thanks for being with us and for this very interesting and very thought-provoking exercise. Thank you all for that. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.